Time it is. It's Al Sharpton's time. And for these next 3 hours, it's time to put aside all pretenses, deception, denial, or fronting. The time has come to keep it real on Keeping It Real with Reverend Al Sharpton. Very good afternoon to you all across the country. And good morning to our West Coast listeners. Welcome to those listening on Sirius XM, channel 126, The Urban View, where talk empowers and becomes action. I'm coming to you live from our National Action Network corporate headquarters in New York. Flew in early this morning from Dallas, had a great Black History Month service with the Dallas Project and Reverend Dr. Byrd and others. A packed house last night, and flew back in this morning, meeting with some of our plenary participants for the National Action Network Convention in April in a few moments. So Dominique Sharpton is going to sit in for me for a while this show, but I wanted to kick it off. Let me be very, very, very clear about announcements. Make sure that you watch Politics Nation with Al Sharpton live at 5 p.m. Eastern Time on Saturday and Sunday. I've got a couple of surprises for you, and I really want everybody tuned in. I also want to say I'll be at the Saturday Action Rally in Harlem, Saturday morning, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. at the House of Justice, and you in the tri-state area should be there with us, 145th Street and Lenox Avenue, or you can watch it live on Impact Television. And the National Action Network Convention, Dominique will be talking about it all through the show, we're going to have everybody there from Attorney Ben Crump to Joy Reid in our talks when she's coming. And, of course, we're honoring Patti LaBelle. We're going to have Stacey Abrams. Everybody doing workshops, 4 days, something you will not get anywhere else, and the registration is free. But you need to sign up today, because we're down to about 5.5 weeks, and we got to order the rooms. And if you sign up at www.nationalactionnetwork.net, or you can call the toll-free number 1-877-626-4651. And I'm looking at already, we getting some comments on our live stream at nationalactionnetwork.net. You can watch us on live stream as we do the show, nationalactionnetwork.net live stream, or you can go to YouTube/Nan. And I see you. Is that Angie? Angie Figtree from says good morning from Barbados. Wow, you making me feel like not so good because it's cold in New York. It was all right in Dallas, but it's cold in New York. Josephine Johnson says she's on, and Angie also had said she's always watching you no matter where I am. Well, I appreciate that, Angie. I really do, especially rubbing it in that you're in Barbados. But let me again emphasize: you need to be at Nan's convention. Aside from the well-regarded, well-respected names that will be there, because I don't believe in people coming and not seeing and hearing from the people in the thick of the fight. But aside from that is where we're going to unveil our economic boycott plan on which company we feel is vulnerable. There's some have called for no shopping blackout on tomorrow. I understand my name is in the call. I did not call it, but I'm not against it. So I don't want people to say, oh, Real Mal got on radio, so he ain't with it. I don't want people to think it's what I called. But any effort that will hold these corporations' feet to the fire, I support. But I cannot give you a report after tomorrow on how it went because I didn't coordinate it. National Action Network didn't coordinate it. So, but I do not disagree with it. So I just want to make that clear because my name was, and I'm glad they said that they, had some movement because I talked about a boycott and was operating in our spirit, and that's good. But I just want you to know that's not National Action Network doing it or me doing it, so we can't really report on what the goal was and how we measure it. But what we announced at the convention in April 2nd through the 5th, we will be able to measure how we're going to do it. What is the measurement of success? How do you measure success? That's why we want to lay this out. Because do you measure it by being able to get them to come to the table and do certain things? Do you measure it by just putting somebody out of business? What's the success measurement? So I take boycotts very seriously. All right, let me get up and give Dominique her chair back. I'm in her office, and I'm going to be meeting again with those that are helping the black business community that's helping us put this convention together. Dominique will engineer the show, and I believe our policy wonk, Attorney Jennifer Jones Austin, will be on with her. So come on, Dominique, and you got it, and y'all can look at Dominique as on live stream. You can do live stream at nationalactionnetwork.net or YouTube/Nan, N-A-N, and Dominique will read your postings and comments, and she will take your calls on the air. All right, 1-877-532-5797.
Good afternoon, everyone, and certainly thank you to Reverend Sharpton for setting the tone, laying out the plan of action, as we know we need that as we continue to move forward. It's also Black History Month, everyone, and as we are, of course, celebrating Black History 365 days out the year, 24/7. We know that in the month of February in particular, we, of course, honor and remember our history, our legacy, and it also gives us a chance to charge forward by discussing the history, by talking about events that have brought us over, that have brought us through, that has sustained us, that has reignited, reevaluated, and redefined our movement and plan of action throughout the years. It is important for us to, as we are continuing in the legacy of our rich and amazing people and our culture, paying homage to the events and to those pallbearers who have sustained us and brought us through, but also talking about the work that we still have to do to move us forward. And in talking about Black history and dealing with the Black history as we look at it in the month of February, we of course want to also take the moment to honor those figures in Black history who have stood up for us, who have progressed us forward, who have done monumental things in our culture for us to see and know and believe that we are excellent and we are Black excellence every single day. And so we're taking your calls about Black history as well. We want to, of course, take the moment to not only talk about the current events and what's going on in the world today and how we are affected by those issues, but we also want to honor those who have done the work and who have stood in the gap for us time and time again, that teaches us and gives us that monument for justice, for equality, that sustains us and keeps us moving forward. So we're taking your calls across the country. You can join in on today's conversation by calling us at 1-877-532-5797, 1-877-532-5797, and we'll be back with more of Keeping It Real with Sharpton. We'll be right back.
Breaking news.
So who is Al Sharpton anyway? Who is this 33-year-old preacher without a church?
A number of Black New Yorkers as well. He is little more than a pudgy exhibitionist who can be counted on to show up, bullhorn in hand, at every racial incident.
I often quote Mark Twain saying, "The two most important moments in life is the moment you are born and the moment you find out why you were born." I had a very troubling conversation the other day that prompted me to do this little video. Young man that I've known a while came to me and he was crushed. I mean, really crushed, because people were criticizing his work. He's in the ministry, but he's also an actor. And he said he couldn't understand why people were jumping all over, criticizing him, trying to find scandalous and derogatory things about him. And I told him, I said, you know, you very young. You don't know the road I've traveled. They call me everything but a child of God.
A blabbermouth, a loudmouth, too flamboyant, an agitator, a racist,
and I
a race
had to
baiter.
learn.
Yeah, right.
I was not defined by how others saw me. I was defined by how I saw myself and whether I was being true to myself. Some of you watching this don't like me. And it doesn't matter as long as I know what I'm doing and I like me for being real. So I'm doing this video to say to you, whoever you are and whatever you do, you may not be in ministry or social justice, none of this stuff, but don't live your life worried about opposition or people that don't like you. You can turn that around. Use me as an example. The same people that called me a scam artist, a con artist, a sellout, or racial hustling, I kept going. And the people I respected started respecting and publicly embracing my work.
When Coretta Scott King, the widow of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., had this to say about Al Sharpton.
A leader who has protested injustice with a passionate, unrelenting commitment to nonviolent action in the spirit and tradition of Martin Luther King Jr. And I am talking about your leader, our leader, the Reverend Al Sharpton.
The other thing that hasn't changed is the National Action Network's commitment to fight injustice and inequality here in New York City and across America. And that's not only a testament to Reverend Sharpton, it's a testament to all of you who are here tonight.
First and foremost, to Reverend Sharpton. I saw him when he first came on the scene, and I have marveled at his tenacity, at the development of his intellect, and his devotion to our movement and much he has contributed to the world we are experiencing. I am honored, and I must say that when I had my debate with Dr. King on the issue of the church and religion, he didn't warn me that after his departure, his space would be filled by another preacher, and that preacher would be Al Sharpton.
All you want in life is people that matter to you to say you did all right. And more important, that you can look in the mirror and say you did all right.
Thank you, Rev. Thanks for that introduction. Look, we've known each other for a long time. I'm grateful not only for your leadership and partnership, but quite frankly, more importantly, for your friendship. And thanks to all of you, members of our nation's most important civil rights organization.
You have been, over all of your years, such an extraordinary leader. You are a voice of truth, a voice of conscience, a voice of practicality around what we must address and what we can do. And I thank you so much for your friendship.
I remember that most of the youth around Al's age, he was about 12, wanted to be like Connie Hawkins, a great basketball player, legend, or Earl the Pearl, or Clyde Frazier. Al wanted to be like Adam Powell, a powerful preacher with a social justice gospel. He was very close to, at that time, to Reverend William Augustus Jones, powerful preacher and social justice advocate, and Reverend Gardner Taylor State right down the street, and Bishop Washington, whose church he came from, and Reverend Sandy Ray. He wanted to be like these giant preachers. He wanted them to have the edge, however, of the King's social justice dimension. He wanted to be like them. Now he's one of them. Perhaps taller than most of them because of the risks he has taken and the reward God has given him with his gift. I remember so well that I first escorted him to jail. He was around 13 years old. With the jail fighting the ANP. He was in the lineage of our struggle. He grew up in it. We didn't just see him on TV one night. He didn't happen. He came bottom up, not top down.
One of the things that we're going to deal with is this DEI, and deal with how we target a company that has joined the anti-DEI movement. Now, there are other efforts going on, and I support them. I'm not against nobody doing whatever they think is right. But I know how to do a boycott. I'm not talking about, I support what a bishop is doing in Georgia, Reggie Jackson, and my friend and brother Jamal Bryant doing the 40-day don't buy. That's great. Somebody else is doing shutdown on the 28th. That's great. They put my name out there. I know about it, but I'm not against it. But what we must do is we're going to convene at the network convention, where we have now a commission that we have started in NAN on King Day, that on 90 days later, which will be in the middle of our convention, we will give the report on a company that has a high level of consumer doubt that comes out of our community and a small margin of profit. We know then that we can take a real impact, because he cannot have his margin of profit turn into a loss and sustain itself. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to announce we're going to buy some stock in some of these companies and go to the stockholders meeting. So all of y'all here today, I'm going to buy some shares, and we go into the stockholders meeting and stand up in the meeting and say, how do you sell in our community, but you won't give contracts to our people? You won't hire our people. You won't deal with the C-suites. So we're going to have a multi-pronged strategy. Why don't you advertise on black media? We're going across the board, and we're laying out the plan. And we got people those 4 days. People that are watching, that want to come, all you have to do is register www.nationalactionnetwork.net, or you can call the toll-free number. You can call now. People are at the phones now at 1-877-626-4651.
The families, we have 3 families represented here. Where we have Eric Nicholson, who your NAB member, Rodney Nicholson is his father. We have both Lisa and Trevor, who lost their mother, and then we have Evelyn and her children and family. You belong with Diaper, the news that Evelyn McClendon. And so Rev wanted
Let's pray. Dear God, we come brokenhearted, but still with firm belief that there is meaning to everything that you allow. Give us the strength to stand even amidst this debris and to rebuild and to stand up to the challenge. And that we come to help these families as we have been anointed by you to be helpful. Stand with the clergy and others in this community and the leaders here to know that they're not alone. And let us not go for vanity, but for sanity.
Yes.
And to redeem this community as an example to people all over the world, that you may be burned down, but you're not burnt out. And that
Keeping it real. I'm Dominique Sharpton, Reverend Sharpton's eldest daughter, sitting in for the Rev today. We're taking your calls across the country. You can join in on the conversation by calling us at 1-877-532-5797, 1-877-532-5797. Before the break, Rev joined us. He is stepping out for a very important meeting today as we are dealing with the economic and poverty that we are all experiencing. He talked a little bit about this national boycott that is happening on this Friday that we truly support. And while Rev is not at the helm of it, National Action Network not at the helm of it, we certainly support it and have been dealing in various ways on how we can really be strategic but also valuable in our activism and dealing around this whole DEI, sanction and dealing how we as a community overall across the nation, how we best succeed in this fight against holding corporations accountable for many of which have demeaned their DEI standards and have, gotten rid of it altogether. And some companies, are saying, nah, we not really there yet. We still need diversity, equity, and inclusion in our corporation. And so we are supporting those corporations, but also really airing out the others that are not in support of our goals and our mission. And of course, in line with making sure that diversity, equity, and inclusion matters and is prevalent and relevant in our organizations, corporations, and in our government across the board. And so we are definitely vigilant in the fight and support the boycott and encourage you all to do the same. Even though we are not at the helm of it, we have a lot of work that we are doing to work towards building a sustaining movement around how we really tackle and deal with these diversity issues that we're encountering. We're taking your calls across the country. As I mentioned, you can join in on the conversation today by calling us at 1-877-532-5797. You can also comment via our live stream at National Action Network. And we are definitely talking about some of the top issues of the week. We'll be joined shortly by Jennifer Jones Austin, as we are every Thursday, but want to really get into some topics of discussion. And as I mentioned, it is Black History Month, and we are definitely talking about, in light of the issues and things that we're dealing with and want to discuss, also amplifying those figures in history throughout our Black history that we want to amplify in this moment as we know the work continues. So I want to talk about my godmother, Dr. Betty Shabazz. She was the wife, and many of you know she was a very, very prominent activist. But she was the wife of Malcolm X, El Haj Malik Al Shabazz. And on last week, we actually commemorated the anniversary of El Haj Malik Al Shabazz's assassination. And we saw in that time how Dr. Betty Shabazz stood against adversity with her 6 young girls when her husband was shot down at the Autobahn ballroom right in front of her and her daughters. We saw how she rose to the occasion, not only to raise those girls, but to raise her purpose in the world. And she was a very devoted educator. She was a devoted wife and revolutionary activist. And she was more than just the wife of Malcolm X. She was a powerful civil rights activist in her own right. And after his assassination in 1965, she did just that, dedicating her life to preserving not only his legacy and fighting for Black empowerment through education and activism, but she was a true pillar of making sure that Black and brown children had access to quality education. And she was very intricate in my educational career, mine and my sister's educational journey, as she, taught my parents about the importance of African institutions, and they enrolled us in one through our elementary and middle school career, to attend an African-centered institution that was run by people of color, taught by people of color, and they instilled values in us. They taught us about African culture. They taught us about the Yoruba nation, and they taught us about the Nguza Sabas, and they taught us about how we as descendants of African people, how we survive and succeed, and how we devote ourselves to quality education and to knowing our history and to being a part of the evolution and revolution of what the future holds. And that's us being dynamic in our stance and in our voice and feeling unapologetic about who we are as people of color. So I come in and I honor Dr. Betty Shabazz and so many of the mothers of the movement who really took that mantle on for excellence. And it was not only for their families, but they also made sure that other families also really learned and really appreciated the struggle in which they had to deal with. And hopefully we didn't have to deal with the same struggles, but, ultimately we did. We're still dealing with a lot of things that, our ancestors had to go through, but they made sure that we had access and opportunities. And so that's what we want to lift up today. And that's what we want to talk about, how we in this moment can continue to elevate opportunities, resources, for our young people to succeed and to thrive in that realm. Also want to talk about as we're talking about education and talk about some of the things that we know we need to discuss. In the news, I wanted to talk about how there are states that are literally bracing themselves for this plan that President Donald Trump has outlined to literally dismantle the education department. President Donald Trump has pushed to abolish the whole education department, and states are literally scrambling as he's trying to determine how to eliminate the United States Department of Education, arguing that education policy should be controlled by individual states. However, state officials across the country are saying that they are unprepared to literally take on departments' massive responsibilities, which are including funding distribution, civil rights enforcement, and also student loan oversight. Now, the confusion and concerns over federal funding cuts without clear guidance from the White House, lawmakers are left guessing, how to actually handle potential funding gaps for low-income students, for low-income schools, with students who have disabilities, federal education programs. And while some Republican leaders are supporting reducing federal oversight, many are also warning that states lack the infrastructure to manage these responsibilities without federal support. And so the fears of privatization and civil rights implications, some Republicans favor converting federal education funding into block grants, which are giving states more flexibility, but raising concerns that funds could really be redirected to support and enhance private schools and private institutions, which are not required to follow civil rights protections for students. And education advocates are warning that eliminating federal oversight could actually worsen these inequalities, particularly for disadvantaged students. So we need to talk about that. And certainly, if we're talking about dismantling the entire education system or the entire education department and how that looks in terms of how funds are particularly disseminated to states, who have to uphold and support public institutions for students to actually go to school and get a quality education. I think that it is without even saying that this is outrageous for many fronts, but also I think it is necessary for advocates, for those who really understand this process, to not be silent about it and to be vocal about it. And so the question is, well, what do you do? If you got people saying, if you have states that are lawmakers in these states saying we are not ready to handle that, that is too robust for us to actually have to deal with. And we're talking about the safety and education component of whether our students in various states actually will get to learn. I think that that's a non-brainer conversation. Why are we even discussing, taking quality education away, or the chance or opportunity for quality education to be taken away from students as we look at state to state and as we look at how lawmakers are being forced to have to deal with this, as a majority. I mean, I don't know. I feel like these conversations just seem to be conversations. I don't necessarily know how in the world they get to come, to fruition. But we need to talk about it, and certainly need to be about it and be about the action of how we are galvanizing and organizing around such issues. I hear that music, though. We're going to take another break. It's Dominique Sharpton. I'm sitting in for the Rev and taking your calls across the country. You can join in on the conversation by calling us at 1-877-532-5797. And we'll be back with more of Keeping It Real with Sharpton. We'll be right back.
Do you owe $10,000 or more in credit card debt or personal loans? With credit card debt at all-time highs, Debt Relief Advocates is urgently notifying consumers of debt relief now being made available, designed
traveling around the country talking to the radio announcers, the church people and the street people, telling them that God has smiled on me. God has smiled on you if you got breath in your body, if he woke you up this morning and started you on your way. But I want to tell you some stories of people that God smiled on. We know the story of Dr. Martin Luther King, how he started way back in Montgomery, Alabama in 1955, trying just to get dignity, trying to get respect. And he went all the way to the mountaintop. But he didn't forget about the brothers in the valley. He didn't forget about those trapped in the alley. And I hear Brother Martin King say, God has smiled on me. He's been good to me. Let me tell you, God has smiled on me. It's been so good to me. Then I see as Dr. King went on, another man stepped into the forefront by the name of John F. Kennedy, who rose up and said, let's not stand back. Let's not wait for a handout. Let's wait for a way out. He said, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. He said, don't us gravel and don't us moan, because God done smile on us. God, let me say it. God has smiled on me. He has set me free. Let me say it. Yeah. One more time. I want to say it real slow. I'll say God has smiled on me. He has set me free. Pick it up. God has smiled on me. I feel it. Then I went on by backstage at the Apollo Theater and I saw a man come out. They call him the King of Soul, James Brown. And James Brown said, Reverend, don't you worry. I started out as a shoe shine boy. I started out as a convict. I started out uneducated. But I learned to sing my song. And I sung it all over the world. I told him it was a man's world. I told him about the big payback. I told him Papa got a brand new bag. And all over the world, they can hear my voice. But Reverend, don't you frown. Don't you bow your head. Tell him what you told me, Brother Brown. I said, God has smiled on me. He has set me free. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I want to scream, y'all. I want to scream, y'all. God has smiled on me. He has set me free. Traveling around the country, talking to the radio announcers, the church people and the street people, telling them that God has smiled on me. God has smiled on you if you got breath in your body. If He woke you up this morning and started you on your way. But I want to tell you some stories of people that God smiled on. We know the story of Dr. Martin Luther King, how he started way back in Montgomery, Alabama in 1955, trying just to get dignity, trying to get respect. And he went all the way to the mountaintop. But he didn't forget about the brothers in the valley. He didn't forget about those trapped in the alley. And I hear Brother Martin King say, God has smiled on me. He's been good to me. Let me tell you, God has smiled on me. It's been so good to me. Then I see as Dr. King went on, another man stepped into the forefront by the name of John F. Kennedy, who rose up and said, let's not stand back. Let's not wait for a handout. Let's wait for a way out. He said, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. He said, don't us gravel and don't us moan, because God done smile on us. Let me say it. God has smiled on me. He has set me free. Let me say it. Yeah. One more time. I want to say it real slow. I'll say God has smiled on me. He has set
532 5797. As a reminder, please, those of you who heard Rev at the beginning of the broadcast today, we have our national convention coming up April 2nd through the 5th in New York City at the Sheraton Hotel in Times Square. It is a free convention, free 99. We just need you to confirm that you'll be in the building April 2nd through the 5th. And we've got some heavy hitters that are lined up to come and address the convention. But it's really a time for us to really galvanize and organize around the issues that matter to us and really setting that action agenda. So we have our chapters who are coming from all over the country, from Tennessee to Maryland to California to Michigan to New York City. They'll all be in the house, and we're really formulating that action agenda of what we're going to do around housing, what we're going to do around healthcare, what we're going to do around these education inequalities. As I mentioned, President Trump trying to dismantle the entire United States Department of Education. We have a lot to work for and towards, but we need to come together to really formulate that action agenda. So we hope that everyone who really, really cares about these issues and cares about being actively involved in these issues will join us in person at the convention in New York City, April 2nd through the 5th. You can log on to our website at www.nationalactionnetwork.net and get the information, and you can register online right there on the website. You can also call us at 877-626-4651 if you want to register over the phone, but registration is free. We just need for you to let us know that you will be in the building. We've heard from some of our friends from National Action Network who've already confirmed they'll be in the building. We've got music icon Patti LaBelle who will be with us, president of 1199 SEIU, labor movement activist George Gresham will be there with us. We have Stacey Abrams, who is confirmed to be with us. We have attorney generals from various states across the country who is going to be with us. Michael Eric Dyson, who's going to be with us. Pastor Jamal Bryant, who's going to be with us. We've got so many that is already confirmed to join us in New York City, and we want you to also be there with us. You can go to the website www.nationalactionnetwork.net and register today. We're going to go to the phones. As I mentioned, you can join in on the conversation today by calling us at 1-877-532-5797. I can't see my call screen, so somebody let me know who we got on the air, and let's talk to them. Let's go to the phones. Let's go to Pam on line 2. Pam, you're keeping it real. Good afternoon.
Hi, Dominique. It's so good to hear you. Yes, and thank you for all that you do. I'm glad about the convention. I cannot be there physically, but I am there in spirit. And whatever the call to action is, we will do, and we will push here in Chicago. Dominique, I wanted to talk about accountability and hypocrisy, if I may. And before that, though, I want to talk about the legacy. The fact that we have this person, this adjudicated sexual abuser in the White House, along with his Nazi-loving, hate-filled cabinet, this is an insult to the legacy of what you said your godmother taught you, the legacy of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, and each and every person that fought that we could have some freedom, some dignity, and that we could move Black people forward. And this is what I'm saying to the people who supported this. I don't hear them, Dominique, asking this person in the White House to do anything decent. The pastors who supported him, the clergy, they're not asking him to be a decent man, to be caring, to have some compassion. All they are doing is going along with his vindictiveness, his vengeance, his evilness, even the way that he is dismantling government. Because you recall Bannon as well as Miller, both of them are hateful, right? just has the hate emanating, from the White House. But there were black people that supported this.
Mm-hmm.
And now here in Chicago, they brag about it, that they're at Mar-a-Lago, that, they had a problem with the Democratic Party. Okay,
But you
be
notice,
that as it
Pam, not
may.
one of them got a cabinet position. Not one of them got appointed to do anything reputable in terms of how we are dealing with these issues or how we're dealing with even governing across the board. And so, yeah, they may have gotten a photo op or a conversation or, a couple of kikis,
Paid off, Dominique. Yeah, that's some of them
whatever
got
the
paid off.
situation is. But we've got real issues on hand, and it doesn't seem like the president has anyone in his ear or around him who is really dealing with how, he's governing for all people and not just a certain group of people. And so, it just seems to me that there's no one around him per se, who has that voice, who has that reasoning voice to say, well, you're talking about dismantling the education departments. Really? Like, are we really going to do that? Are we really going to go there? Are we really going to, cripple the nation in this capacity? And so, I feel like this is just a resurgence for us. I feel like it just means that we've got to get up and do more. We've got to get up and fight back. We've got to get up and be vocal, not just be, behind our screens or behind our phones, but we've got to really show up in masses to say, look, we built this country and we are here in this country and we care about this country, and we are not going to allow to just, take anything that's coming to us. We have to learn how to fight back, and we've got to do that very strategically. And so that's why I'm here. I don't know about you, Pam. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, Dominique, I'm just as imperfect as it is. And then let me just ask one more point, and then I'll hang up and listen. Dominique, I need to know. I know what the poor, working class people and middle class. Dominique, we're fighting billionaires and millionaires. We need our black billionaires, as few as they may be, and millionaires to stand up and either say something or do something.
Absolutely.
And I know that, Reverend Sharpton will have contact with them, but we need to know who is on our side.
That's right.
This is the time to stand up for evil. It's right or wrong, good or evil. There is no gray. You know it. And so we all have to put out whatever we need to put on the line. Reverend Sharpton is doing it. Reverend Jackson has done it. All that came before us. So I'm ready for whatever the call is. And then let me say, for the boycott, I'm all for it. And let me just ask this. You people who love your designer clothes and your luxury items, could you kind of just pull back on that too? Could you have your own? I'm serious, Dominique. Can we not, and I don't mean any harm, can we maybe not have the designer purses and clothes? Can we do it out that a little bit?
I feel like we need to be more strategic and conscious of how we're spending our dollars, especially in a time like this where we don't know, we're dealing with inflation on top of the fact that, we're dealing with, of course, DEI and corporations that are saying, I'm not with that. We're dealing with a lot of that. And so it just seems to me like as we're paying $15 for a dozen of eggs, we have to be strategic about how we're spending our money and where our money is going. Very important in this line also to amplify Black-owned businesses and where our Black businesses are and how not only their products, are disseminated to our community and being accessible to us. As we know, they were accessible to us in the Walmarts and the super centers that, that are in close proximity to many of the communities that we reside in. But we also need to really reach for our Black-owned businesses and really help to galvanize and organize around making sure that they are accessible to us in our community. That's also very important. And that's another level of this boycott that we're talking about too. All right, Pam, I hear that music. Thank you so much for your call. We're going to take another break. It's Dominique Sharpton. I'm sitting in for the Rev, taking your calls across the country. You can join in on the conversation by calling us at 1-877-532-5797, 1-877-532-5797. We'll be back with more of Keeping It Real with Sharpton. We'll be right back.
The families, we have 3 families represented here. Where we have Eric, Nicholson, who your NAB member, Rodney Nicholson is his father. We have both Lisa and Trevor, who lost their mother, and then we have Evelyn and her children and family. You could all recite the news that Evelyn McClendon's. And so we're one.
Let's pray. Dear God, we come brokenhearted, but still with firm belief that there is meaning to everything that you allow. Give us the strength to stand even amidst this debris and to rebuild and to stand up to the challenge. And that we come to help these families as we have been anointed by you to be helpful. Stand with the clergy and others in this community and the leaders here to know that they're not alone. And let us not go for vanity, but for sanity.
Yes.
And to redeem this community as an example to people all over the world, that you may be burned down, but you're not burnt out, and that you will make a way out of nowhere. These blessings we ask on each and every one of these people, even when the cameras are going, that you still shine a light of mercy. These blessings we ask in your name. Amen.
So who is Al Sharpton anyway? Who is this 33-year-old preacher without a church?
A number of black New Yorkers as well. He is little more than a pudgy exhibitionist who can be counted on to show up, bullhorn in hand, at every racial incident.
I often quote Mark Twain saying, "The two most important moments in life is the moment you are born and the moment you find out why you were born." I had a very troubling conversation the other day that prompted me to do this little video. Young man that I've known a while came to me and he was crushed. I mean, really crushed, because people were criticizing his work. He's in the ministry, but he's also an actor. And he said he couldn't understand why people were jumping all over, criticizing him, trying to find scandalous and derogatory things about him. And I told him, I said, you know, you're very young. You don't know the road I've traveled. They called me everything but a child of God.
Racial discord, a blabbermouth, a loudmouth, too flamboyant, an agitator, a racist,
I
a race
had to
baiter.
learn.
Yeah, right.
I was not defined by how others saw me. I was defined by how I saw myself and whether I was being true to myself. Some of you watching this don't like me. And it doesn't matter as long as I know what I'm doing. And I like me for being real. So I'm doing this video to say to you, whoever you are, and whatever you do, you may not be in ministry or social justice, none of this stuff, but don't live your life worried about opposition or people that don't like you. You can turn that around. Use me as an example. The same people that call me a scam artist, a con artist, a sellout, or racial hustler and all, I kept going. And the people I respected started respecting and publicly embracing my work.
When Coretta Scott King, the widow of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., had this to say about Al Sharpton.
A leader who has protested injustice with a passionate, unrelenting commitment to nonviolent action in the spirit and tradition of Martin Luther King Jr. And I am talking about your leader, our leader, the Reverend Al Sharpton.
The other thing that hasn't changed is the National Action Network's commitment to fight injustice and inequality here in New York City and across America. And that's not only a testament to Reverend Sharpton, it's a testament to all of you who are here tonight.
First and foremost, to Reverend Sharpton. I saw him when he first came on the scene, and I have marveled at his tenacity, at the development of his intellect, and his devotion to our movement, and much he has contributed to the world we are experiencing. I am honored, and I must say that when I had my debate with Dr. King on the issue of the church and religion, he didn't warn me that after his departure, his space would be filled by another preacher, and that preacher would be Al Sharpton.
All you want in life is people that matter to you to say you did all right. And more important, that you can look in the mirror and say you did all right.
Thank you, Rev. Thanks for that introduction. Look, we've known each other for a long time. I'm grateful not only for your leadership and partnership, but quite frankly, more importantly, for your friendship. And thanks to all of you, members of our nation's most important civil rights organization.
You have been, over all of your years, such an extraordinary leader. You are a voice of truth, a voice of conscience, a voice of practicality around what we must address and what we can do. And I thank you so much for your friendship.
I remember that most of the youth around Al's age, he was about 12, wanted to be like Connie Hawkins, a great basketball player, legend, or Earl the Pearl, or Clyde Frazier. Al wanted to be like Adam Powell, a powerful preacher with a social justice gospel. He was very close to, at that time, to Reverend William Augustus Jones, powerful preacher and social justice advocate, and Reverend Gardner Taylor State right down the street, and Bishop Washington, whose church he came from, and Reverend Sandy Ray. He wanted to be like these giant preachers. He wanted them to have the edge, however, of the King's social justice dimension. He wanted to be like them, now he's one of them. Perhaps taller than most of them because of the risks he has taken and reward God has given him with his gift. I remember so well that I first escorted him to jail. He was around 13 years old, with the jail fighting the ANP. He was in the lineage of our struggle. He grew up in it. We didn't just see him on TV one night. He didn't happen. He came bottom up, not top down.
One of the things that we're going to deal with is this DEI, and deal with how we target a company that has joined the anti-DEI movement. Now, there are other efforts going on, and I support them. I'm not against nobody doing whatever they think is right. But I know how to do a boycott. I'm not talking about, I support what a bishop is doing in Georgia, Reggie Jackson, and my friend and brother Jamal Bryant doing the 40-day don't buy. That's great. Somebody else is doing shutdown on the 28th. That's great. They put my name out there. I know about it, but I'm not against it. But what we must do is we're going to convene at the network convention, where we have now a commission that we have started in NAN on King Day, that on 90 days later, which will be in the middle of our convention, we will give the report on a company that has a high level of consumer doubt that comes out of our community and a small margin of profit. We know then that we can take a real impact, because he cannot have his margin of profit turn into a loss and sustain itself. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to announce we're going to buy some stock in some of these companies and go to the stockholders meeting. So all of y'all here today, I'm going to buy some shares, and we go into the stockholders meeting and stand up in the meeting and say, how do you sell in our community, but you won't give contracts to our people? You won't hire our people. You won't deal with the C-suite. So we're going to have a multi-pronged strategy. Why don't you advertise on black media? We're going across the board, and we're laying out the plan. And we got people those 4 days. People that are watching, that want to come, all you have to do is register www.national.
Keeping It Real. I'm Dominique Sharpton, Reverend Sharpton's eldest daughter, sitting in for the Rev today, taking your calls across the country. You can join in on the conversation by calling us at 1-877-532-5797, 1-877-532-5797. And we've got some folks online watching us via live stream as we are live streaming. And you can also comment on the live stream at National Action Network. We're live and we are about the action. Let's go back to the phones. I see my brother holding on, listening to us from Germany. Rick, you're keeping it real. Good afternoon, Rick.
How did you know it was me?
What's going on, brother?
I wanted to first. I want to say that people should look up Frances Cress Welsing on YouTube. She has a video on white supremacy and AIDS, part 2, and it's not a visual video, but it's the audio to a lecture she gave sometime around 1990. I speak about that and lead into my comment. What have you heard about what is going on in Congo? Not the war between Congo and Rwanda, but the mystery disease that has cropped up and is slowly killing people over the last 3 weeks. What have you heard about this?
Not much. I do know about what's been going on here, with the measles outbreak and things that's happening here, but I did not hear about anything happening there. So please enlighten us.
50 plus people have died in Western Congo. They're saying on CBS that it is possibly malaria, but they don't know exactly what it is. I say to you that HIV and AIDS came out of a laboratory, and disease popping up in Africa possibly comes out of a laboratory as well. I'm done, sis.
Very interesting that you're saying that. And I know that as I was dealing with that, I know our executive producer put that here too, because we're dealing with, the first measles death that was reported in Texas. And this outbreak that's happening. And you're talking about, laboratory, illnesses that are deriving from labs that are, being circulated around vulnerable communities across the world. And then, and that's not something that we should take lightly. It is not something that is new, and it's not something that, that we haven't dealt with or continue to deal with. But it's something that we definitely need to be aware of and how we are combating this. And remember, and dealing with, how government relations are happening now, with other countries, with what we're dealing today in terms of our healthcare crisis and things that we're dealing with in the United States. I think that it's really important for us, again, as activists, as those who care about these issues, we've got to be on top of this game. And as Jennifer Jones, who's coming on, has talked to us before about being reactionary to a lot of these issues as they come out. We've got to be more proactive with how we combat these issues and get on top of how before we hear about it in the news, before it starts, plaguing our communities, before it starts killing our children, we need to be proactive in terms of our activism, how we deal with and combat these issues as they come, to us and before us. So thank you so much for laying that out for us, Rick, and always keeping it real. Let's go back to Chicago, listening to us on WVON. Brother Andre J on line 6. You're keeping it real. Good afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon to you, Sister Dominique. How you doing?
All right.
Hey, I'm going to ask you a question. When Joe Biden was in office and Kamala Harris was running, it seemed like all these different groups, some of them special interests, was coming out protesting. But with all of these things and these cuts and stuff with Donald Trump, I haven't seen the disabled veterans come together and protest about any cuts in the Veterans Administration and stuff. Why do you think that is that on the one hand, they was upset about these things and protests when you had Biden in there and Harris, but on the other hand, when Trump was in there, people being passive about things. Do you think it might have been because Donald Trump is white and that they giving him a pass on some stuff? Or do you think that
I
they
think
were just
it's I
trying to
think
harm
it's more of a fear, is a fear factor in my opinion, and I could be wrong. I'm not, I ain't scared. I ain't never been scared. I don't come from a family who's scared. So we know that we going to continue to speak up, and we know that, being vocal and active about issues that matter to us is how we progress our situations forward. But I will say that, yes, there was an upsurgence of demonstrations of people speaking out. And it seems like now is not, I'm not trying to say people are quiet, but I feel like, there's some type of, there's a fear factor here because we just don't know what's coming. I mean, this man came out and said he want to dismantle the entire U.S. Department of Education, and we'll do that, and we'll push to get that done. So, I mean, these are things that that are outrageous, that are happening, and we just don't know. It's kind of like, you get in the ring and you got your guard up, but you just don't know how to throw the punch because you don't know what's coming. You got to keep your guard up though, because you don't know, how the swing is coming at you. And so I think that right now, a lot of us are in a state of, well, what's coming? What punch is coming next for us to have to swing back on? If it's DEI, if it's dismantling education, if it's dealing with healthcare, if it's dealing with, whatever it is, it's like we don't know what punch we've got to swing back on in this moment, because everything is just coming at us from all different angles. And so that's what I mean by we've got to be more proactive in terms of getting on top of, well, how do we deal with these issues? I know they're coming. We saw Project 2025 was coming. I don't know why we didn't pay so much attention to it, but we knew it was coming. And they're doing exactly what they said they were going to do. They told us it was coming. It's here. It's moving into fruition. And we've got to do our part now to not be so reactionary to these issues, but more proactive in terms of how we're moving our fight forward.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it seems like back during Reverend Sharpton's generation, it's like those people were afraid not to do something. And here it is modern day, they're afraid to do something. Mm-hmm. It's like some of it I don't get, and you said it is fear factor. But you should, not you, but they should fear, those disabled veterans and the seniors, everybody should be afraid not to do something in this point.
That's right.
Lastly, I don't know if you've seen the NAACP speech, but I've seen it from Kamala Harris, and I think that when she made that speech, it was a midterm speech. I think that Kamala Harris gave us marching orders in that NAACP speech, and I think we should take it as that. Because she showed every strength, and it was somewhat sad to see a qualified lady like that miss out on the opportunity to become a president because Donald Trump got a pass because of white privilege, that the Supreme Court, the Congress, and everybody else skirted the rules to allow this man to sit in there. And that's why I could never refer to him as my president, because he's illegitimate. And for me to compliment anything that Donald Trump does means that I'm legitimizing his presidency, and I don't think he went through the rules to get there, to sit by that resolute desk. So that's
we got to stand up.
We
got to stand up. We got to come together, and we have to fight back. Now is the time more than ever. I don't know what other, incident we need. I don't know what else we need to see or need to know. But, I can't take no more. I'm just like, like, where is everybody? What's up? What we doing? What's the call to action and what's the marching orders? And so I'm with you with that, Andre J. And I do feel like we have the momentum and the capacity to do what we need to do. We just got to come together and do it. Thank you so much for your call. Yeah. All right, let's go to Perry. Let's go to Perry listening to us from Cincinnati on the Buzz. Perry, you're keeping it real. Good afternoon.
How you doing, Sister Dominique?
All right, how are you?
I'm fine. And just to piggyback on what y'all said, what your father stood for, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, I can go on and on. It's our turn now, sister. And if we don't do it now, God's supposed to be in us. So if we don't do it now as his children, it's our fault. So I commend you. I ain't met you, but I'm so happy for you and your father, because it's our turn now. It is time now. I know who army I'm in, and I know who I serve.
That's right. You know, and saying that, you know, it is important to choose sides. I know that brother Rick was talking earlier. You know, we were talking about choosing. We got to choose a side. You know, where does your battle stand? You know, what is it that's important to you? And it's like, you know, at this time, we can't be complacent. We can't just sit on the sidelines and say, I'm gonna let y'all handle this. I'm gonna let the Rev, you know, go and do the good fight. You know, Rev got it. We've got to come together, and we need everybody, you know, on that battlefield for justice, because it is our time, and it is going to be up to us to fight back, whether it be with the strategic boycott, whether it be, you know, holding these lawmakers accountable, whether it be having these conversations on platforms like this to continue to galvanize and energize people into action. But we've got to do our part at the end of the day. And I feel like it's now more than ever before that it's time.
And I agree with you 100%, sister. And I'm going to say this to let you go, because I know you got a lot of callers.
That's all right.
But again, out of the spirits of my ancestors, and I mean all of them, the ones from motherland and the one from here in the United States, it's our turn now. Mm-hmm. So you either at the table or you on the menu.
That's right.
So we got to step up. And I'm going to say this to really let you go. We supposed to be warriors. I'm talking about the brothers out here, okay? So you got to take care of your village first. And I'm in this world, but I'm not of it. But while I'm here, I'm going to do what I can. And I'm politically active in my community. And I call it Little Africa, and it's Avondale. And all I'm going to say is it's our turn. So I'm so happy for you. I'm so happy for your father. I'm telling you, because it's our time now. If we don't do it now, ain't nobody going to save us. They don't care about us. I know I'm a child of God. So I'm going to do what he would do. And I'm going to let you go on that, W. You keep on doing what you're doing, Sister Eve.
Thank you so much. And I love that energy. I appreciate that. And I appreciate you keeping it real. We're going to take another break. It's Dominique Sharpton. I'm sitting in for the Rev, taking your calls across the country. Join in on the conversation. Call us at 1-877-532-5797. We'll be back with more of Keeping It Real with Jennifer Jones-Austin. We'll be right back.
Breaking news.
I had a thought this morning that I want to share with you about mentorship. I am able to do a lot of what I do because I had great mentors, but there are correct ways and incorrect ways to mentor people, in my opinion. I was mentored as a boy preacher by Bishop F.D. Washington, one of the great Pentecostal preachers of his time. Then Reverend William Jones became my pastor after Bishop Washington died, who was unquestionably in the top 5 black church ministers, theologians. Reverend Jesse Jackson, who I started my activism under his leadership, he and Reverend Jones. And I learned politics directly as a youth director from Shirley Chisholm. So even though I didn't finish college, I had the most unique education in the world from being exposed to giants. But the one thing I learned is as I grew older and people started coming younger than me and wanted me to teach and mentor them, the magic of the mentors I had is they did not want me to be their clone. They wanted me to learn things from them and use my own gifts and talents in my own unique way and let me do things on my own, because they knew that if I flopped in some things, it would teach me with other things. They'll come and help me once I was down, but they were not going to have me avoid being down. And they were not going to impose themselves on me. Why am I saying that? Because too many mentors want clones. And too many mentees want their mentors to put them on a pedestal. Oh, so-and-so didn't do this for me. Oh, so-and-so didn't open doors for me. If they got to open doors for you, it may mean that they knew you weren't ready to go through those doors. Their job is to prepare you. Your job is to develop your own skills, your own unique ways. And I don't care if it's my daughters, who both have come into their own, or anyone else. I'm not a talent agent. I did not form National Action Network to give people their step up. I formed it to fight for justice for everybody. If talented people get in, it's my job to invest and give them a platform. It's their job to get on the platform and perform and show their ability. Sitting with me today in the office as I talk about it is one of my mentees, Reverend Stephen Marshall. Now, Stephen, you just came around us when you were how old?
11 years old.
11 years old. You just turned 40 and now you're called to the ministry?
Yes, sir.
And what do you do in National Action Network?
I formulate policies, lead in various regions, but most importantly, I senior advisor to you on all things from social justice strategies, politics, intergovernmental affairs, you name it, community organizing, all of that stuff.
And I could go through scores of others. My daughter started Huddle. They got Huddles now, which is for young people to meet once a week all over the country. I just saw the video from the Las Vegas National Action Network chapter. Now, when you decided to preach, did I ever tell you to become a preacher?
Not one time.
Who called you to preach?
The Lord.
All right. And did I say go to this school or that school?
No, sir.
Did I open this door, that door? Did I tell you be ready when the doors open?
Always be ready and prepared.
And that's what I'm saying. Get you some young people than you that you can help along the way. But don't be their talent agent. Their talent must speak for themselves. And anybody that grumbles with you about so-and-so didn't do something for them, maybe it's because they didn't feel you were ready or that they felt if they did it, you wouldn't do it on your own. But we all don't live forever. I want the next generation to speak of me, of National Action Network, and others. The way I speak of Reverend Jones and Bishop Washington and Shirley Chisholm and Reverend Jackson. But I just don't want young people to feel that somebody ought to give them the reins of leadership or give them the reins of business or whatever it is you're in. You need to learn from their journey, get the pearls of wisdom from them, but don't have them do for you, because then it means you can't do it for yourself.
So who is Al Sharpton anyway? Who is this 33-year-old preacher without a church?
A number of black New Yorkers as well. He is little more than a pudgy exhibitionist who can be counted on to show up, bullhorn in hand, at every racial incident.
I often quote Mark Twain saying, "The two most important moments in life is the moment you are born and the moment you find out why you were born." I had a very troubling conversation the other day that prompted me to do this little video. A young man that I've known a while came to me and he was crushed. I mean, really crushed, because people were criticizing his work. He's in the ministry, but he's also an actor. And he said he couldn't understand why people were jumping all over, criticizing him, trying to find scandalous and derogatory things about him. And I told him, I said, you know, you very young. You don't know the road I've traveled. They called me everything but a child of God.
A blabbermouth, a loudmouth, too flamboyant, an agitator, a racist,
I had to learn.
Yeah, right.
I was not defined by how others saw me. I was defined by how I saw myself and whether I was being true to myself. Some of you watching this don't like me. And it doesn't matter as long as I know what I'm doing and I like me for being real. So I'm doing this video to say to you, whoever you are and whatever you do, you may not be in ministry or social justice, none of this stuff, but don't live your life worried about opposition or people that don't like you. You can turn that around. Use me as an example. The same people that called me a scam artist, a con artist, a sellout, or racial hustler and all, I kept going. And the people I respected started respecting and publicly embracing my work.
When Coretta Scott King, the widow of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., had this to say about Al Sharpton.
A leader who has protested injustice with a passionate, unrelenting commitment to nonviolent action in the spirit and tradition of Martin Luther King Jr. And I am talking about your leader, our leader, the Reverend Al Sharpton.
The other thing that hasn't changed is the National Action Network's commitment to fight injustice and inequality here in New York City and across America. And that's not only a testament to Reverend Sharpton, it's a testament to all of you who are here tonight.
First and foremost, to Reverend Sharpton. I saw him when he first came on the scene, and I have marveled at his tenacity, at the development of his intellect, and his devotion to our movement, and much he has contributed to the world we are experiencing. I am honored, and I must say that when I had my debate with Dr. King on the issue of the church and religion, he didn't warn me that after his departure, his space would be filled by another preacher, and that preacher would be Al Sharpton.
All you want in life is people that matter to you to say you did all right. And more important, that you can look in the mirror and say you did all right.
Thank you, Rev. Thanks for that introduction. Look, we've known each other for a long time. I'm grateful not only for your leadership and partnership, but quite frankly, more importantly,
I'm Dominique Sharpton, Reverend Sharpton's eldest daughter, sitting in for the Rev. Taking your calls across the country. You can join in on the conversation by calling us at 1-877-532-5797, 1-877-532-5797. And we are joined, as we are every Thursday, by Sister Jennifer Jones Austin, Chief Executive Officer of the Federation of Protestant Welfare Agencies, and of course, the Vice Chair of National Action Network's Executive Board. Sister Jennifer, good afternoon. How are you?
Good afternoon. I am holding. Lots going on in this world that is, it's a lot to handle, a lot to manage, and just all of us trying to stay sane and live to the best of our abilities with the least amount of stress because, as we all know, stress in the mind has impact on the body.
Absolutely.
We got to keep ourselves physically strong, so in turn we can be mentally strong, and keep ourselves mentally strong, so in turn we can be physically strong. But it is, as I'm sure many people know, it is easier said than done, and especially right now.
Absolutely. How are you feeling physically?
I am getting through. Shingles is it's a journey, and what is happening right now? I'm about 3.5 weeks in, and they say the hardest part is over, but the pain can persist for as many as 6 months to 1 year.
What?
So, I'm trying to hold firm that it's not going to be that long. But I'm going to be all right. I've been through a lot, and I've been okay.
Yes,
so I'm going to get through this, too. And I'm going to keep dancing.
All right now. I love that. I love that. We're talking today, Sister Jennifer, and as we are winding down for the month of February, we know that we celebrate Black History Month every day of the year. I know I do. I know you do. But as we are winding down from this month of February, first of all, I want to also mention that on yesterday, February 26th, was the anniversary of the killing, to me, the assassination, I say, of Trayvon Martin. Trayvon Martin was 17 years old when he was shot down by a gunman, George Zimmerman, in Sanford, Florida. He was 17 years old. That was 13 years ago. Trayvon would have been 30 years old on his past birthday. And so we are reminded, through as we're talking about Black history and through these moments that not only revitalized the movement, gave us, a resurgence of action to be involved, to get involved, and especially for young people in this moment, who had not necessarily necessarily been exposed to, the marchings of even the Sean Bells and those that have come before what happened to Trayvon Martin. But this was a resurgence across the country and a revitalizing moment to get in the fight and be active, to understand the systemic racism and things that were going on and how we are still experiencing that today. But it was also, literally a moment where we had to see the crippling criminal justice system, as we were not, George Zimmerman was not brought to justice by a criminal justice system. But how we remain vigilant and diligent in the fight for justice, to stand with the mother of Trayvon Martin, Sabrina Fulton, who has since even revitalized her purpose in forming the Trayvon Martin Foundation. And they do programs for young people across the country and so many great work. But she was even able to stand in that moment, in that crippling moment that, that we felt with her, to stand up in her purpose through her pain. Right. And so we've seen that throughout our history. We've seen moments like this, from having to, that Mamie Till Mobley, and, and her fight for justice, how she stood up and said, no, keep that casket open. Let America see what they did to my baby. And then moving forward to this generation of Trayvon Martin having to deal with, and how we even have to deal with now in this surgence of how we're dealing with our government and what's going on today. Even talking about, as we were talking about, how President Trump was trying to dismantle the United States Education Department. And so many things that we're dealing with. And so, in Black history in this moment, and I know that you are one who was, born and bred into this just like I was. But, how we continue to, relish in these stories that, really brought us through, really helped to redefine our movement and to sustain us as we continue to persevere towards fighting for justice and equality for all who deserve. What do you feel in this moment in terms of how we lift up Black history, as we only have 2 more days left of February, but as we know, we need to continue to galvanize and organize our people towards real systemic change that we believe in?
Ooh, I so much appreciate all that you said. And as you talked, I was reminded of 2 things. One, just remembering on so many instances, seeing as I was growing up and still today, people engaged in the movement, signing letters and statements with the words "A luta continua," which is I believe it's a Portuguese statement, a Portuguese phrase that means the struggle continues. This appreciation that the struggle has never ceased. And I also remember, I was saying 2 things. My father reminding his 4 children from the earliest of our days that we had to remember that racism is ever persisting, that no matter the strides made in America, through the civil rights movement and other actions, racism is alive and well, and that we should never, never, never think, with the election of a Black male president, that we were beyond racism. Remember, when President Obama was elected, people began talking about us living in a post-racial society. And it was like, where? Who? What? And when Trayvon Martin was tragically, unnecessarily, without provocation, killed by Zimmerman, it was that yet again, like that reminder, like racism is alive and well. My son at the time, I'll never forget, he was maybe 8, 9 years old, and explaining to him what that was, what happened and why it happened. And what I had to do was help him appreciate this is not an isolated occurrence. This is the story of Blacks in America. And the challenge that I believe we have as a people is we sometimes, just as, with critical race theory and the pushback on that by white people saying, like, why should our white children have to be traumatized by telling the story? Like it's not fair to do that. We have many black families that don't want to tell the story to their children of how we have been and continue to be harmed by structural racism and structural economic deprivation and all the whys. And I think it's in these moments when we remember Trayvon Martin, We remember the work of his mother. We remember the work of organizations like NAN who poured into and supported her. That we have to remember, we have to keep these stories alive because, in one, it helps to protect our children so they see it before it comes to their door, but they also know that they have to be engaged continually in the struggle.
Yes,
we can't
yes,
let
yes.
up.
Thank you, Sister Jennifer. We'll be back. We're going to take your calls across the country. You can join in on the conversation, 1-877-532-5797. When we come back, we're going to talk with Sister Jennifer about this House vote on their budget blueprint and also the case before the Supreme Court concerning white and straight bias in the workplace. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. More of Keeping It Real with Sharpton. We'll be right back.
Do you owe $10,000 or more in credit card debt or personal
Joining
loans?
James Brown, Muhammad Ali, and myself now from New York City is the Reverend Al Sharpton. And Mr. Brown, James, I'd like to ask you about this young man, how you came to meet him, and what the National Youth Movement, which he represents, is all about. Tell me something about that.
It's about teaching young kids the right way to go and the things to be involved in education. Don't be a dropout, which is one thing I'm very much behind. Unless kids have guidance, they have no place to go. And the idea is to try to mold them. I mean, we think of anything, we think of it as a baby. And what we molded them to be is what it will be later on. He used to stand at my back door. And he believed in what I said, the Don't Be a Dropout program, and the fact of helping kids and giving them the right idol and the right image to go with, cleaning, grooming, and wanting to work, wanting to be something. I started as a kid, a juvenile delinquent, and everything. Had no model. And I was able to be a model for a young man like this. And what he turned out to be, he's a minister, and he preaches the right thing, and I'm for him 1,000%. I'm for everything he's about.
Mr. Sharpton, how national right now is the National Youth Movement? Is it something new? Has it been going on for a while? Do you have a stated number of members? Tell me something about it.
Well, we don't really get into a numbers game because that's been a trick that has been played for the last 20 years. What we're basically interested in doing is saying to young people of impoverished backgrounds that there are people like a Muhammad Ali and a James Brown that represents hope to us. Because these people, despite all of the social odds, despite the unemployment statistics, despite the lack of education in their day, were able to grow and be something that we can be proud of. A man like me didn't have a father at home, but I had a James Brown to look up to and would want to sing and dance like him, or Muhammad Ali, who I saw stand up and give away millions of dollars of stamps to the government so that I would have a right to come 10 or 20 years later and try to fight for my kids. So what we're saying is there are symbols and images that kids can look up to and not have to throw a brick through a window, but that can work by the sweat of their brow and succeed just like these two gentlemen did.
But considering the numbers of young kids today, and Rev, there are hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands of kids who really are in hopeless and desperate situations, is it enough to just offer them an example?
You say hopeless, though. Not hopeless.
Well, let's say, well, to them, 10, 11, 12-year-old kids,
it's never hopeless. There's no such thing as hopeless. It's never hopeless. When I got 8 to 16 years for breaking and entering as a kid, because I was hungry, and here I am today, it's not hopeless. Don't say hopeless. Then we're carving out. I don't believe in hopeless. Don't you think it's hope? If you believe in something, it's right. No such hopeless. I don't believe in hopeless. We're not going to go with that. And I think he's not about teaching them how to get out and fight for themselves. That's what it's about. No, it's not hopeless. Everybody has a cause and everything, but everybody want to live. And I think living is what we're about. We're not going to teach dying. Hopeless is dying.
I agree with you 100%, James. But what I'm trying to ask here is simply saying, you too can be a James Brown or a Muhammad Ali. Is that enough to give a kid who's hungry, who doesn't know where his next meal is coming?
I'll say that.
Give him somewhere to go.
I think it's awful weak to tell a kid, you can be a James Brown, one of the greatest entertainers in the world, and me, one of the greatest fighters. And like you said, the hundreds of thousands of millions of kids that need a break. You can't have that many great people, but they can get educated, they can go to school, they can learn. I'd like to say one thing. We have crime today, it's a big problem. I think they took a national vote on what the people want the government to spend most of the money on, and crime was over national defense. Worrying about Russia, China, outside enemies, they're worrying about inside crime. We have crime today, all type prostitution, murder, exploitation, degradation, and wars of all kinds. And I'm going to tell you why everything's happening. And I think if you're intelligent, you agree with it. If we ride in an airplane and the two pilots die for some reason, is there anybody in this room that can go in the cockpit, pick up the radio, start working it, bring the plane in, depressurize it as it land, and make it, and late at night on a stormy day? You couldn't do it.
Right.
Well, but if you learn how to fly, or if they show you how to fly, you can. Since God made the world and God made us, He sent the Bible, the Torah, the Quran, sent Moses, Jesus, Noah, to show us how to run the world. And God left His laws. If we don't follow His laws, then we crash.
Let me say this, though, Mr. Snyder, in response to your question to Mr. Brown, Mr. Ali. Yes, it is enough to begin with showing them an example. Because before you get to education, you need motivation. If you don't have motivation to get out of the bed, you won't make school or the party. And what we try to do by showing a James Brown or Muhammad Ali is not that you can be a great champion maybe like Ali or a great entertainer like James Brown, but if you use the same initiative that they did to make him get up 5 in the morning and run 10 miles and just have a dream and to come back 3 times and accomplish that dream, to have more hits than anybody in the world, even when the music world wouldn't give him credit for it in terms of a James Brown. If you had that initiative to keep working at whatever it is that you're going to do, you can succeed. And what we're saying to them is you may not reach the plateau of public prominence of them, but if you can reach the personal discipline and personal motivation of them, you can reach a plateau in your life. Because it's not about looking for a government handout, it's about looking for a way out, as James Brown said.
All right, and then how receptive are the young people that you tell this to?
Very receptive.
Really?
Very receptive. Very receptive. I think that people have misunderstood that most people of impoverished and depressed areas are not looking for the government to give them something. They just want a chance. I remember when I was a little boy, James Brown used to sing, I don't want nobody to give me nothing, just open the door, I'll get it myself. Well, that's all people want now is a chance. Let me get a piece of the action. Let me get a piece of the pie. Let me stand up on my own.
All right. At one man should have the major corporations, the government, should get behind him and push the programs that he's about.
Except maybe if he does it himself and gets grassroots support, it's better than having the government stick their nose in because they have a way sometimes.
We're not talking about control.
Yeah.
We're not talking about control. We're talking about a way of start. You know, they have to start. If they fund Chrysler and fund all these different other things, they can fund a small man to get started. Then the private sector will join in. But let them help too. It should be.
Last thing. Somewhere along the line here tonight we used a graphic saying long, hot summer. Are you in any way, I'm certain you're not predicting a long, hot summer. You're not predicting.
Work is required. And if we can't stand up now, you got a president in the White House that has said outright, I'm not going to have diversity. Outright said he's not going to deal with the question of racism. Outright said he's suspending anything that guarantees that we're going to deal with the question of racism. In fact, he said they are oppressing white folk. What Trump said. And you are not saying nothing. And you in the pulpit, well, every
Keeping it real. I'm Dominique Sharpton, sitting in for the Rev with Jennifer Jones Austin. We're taking your calls across the country. You can join in on the conversation. Call us at 1-877-532-5797, 1-877-532-5797. Sister Jennifer, I want to talk about this final vote in the House on their budget blueprint. Tell us about that. What was the final vote in the House on their budget, and will the government remain open? We got a lot to talk about here.
Was at 217 in favor of passing and moving to the Senate the spending bill 217 to 215, with all 217 votes cast being Republican votes, and the 215 were all Democrat and 1 Republican. Now, here's the thing to note about this bill. The reason why they're pushing it through in the way that they are on the House side is because it's a reconciliation bill where you've got to essentially, reconcile the budget as it's moving forward mid-year before you pass another budget. When you do reconciliation budgets, you only need a simple majority of the Senate to approve it, meaning you only need 51 senators to approve the bill, or you do 50 with the vice president of the party that's in charge making the deciding vote. You need like 51, okay? The challenge that exists is that if you don't do it through the reconciliation bill, then you only get to do this but once, meaning that if all of the proposed cuts and the tax plan that Donald Trump is pushing is not covered in this reconciliation bill, then whatever isn't covered has to get picked up separately, and then it's going to require a 2/3 vote of the Senate. So what the Senate has been talking about doing is splitting the spending, the reconciliation from the tax cuts and jobs renewal bill, and the House doesn't want to do that because if you split it, you can't get it through with just 51 votes. If it is split, then and the TCJA, tax cuts and job renewal, goes later, then what happens is that's going to require a Senate vote of as much as 60%, or at the least 60%, 2/3 of the Senate voting. That's why they're trying to push it together all in one. Here's the deal. If it goes all in one, what we're seeing is that this bill, this crazy bill, would increase the deficit for America by at least $4 trillion, at least $4.5 trillion in 1 year. And why is that? Because the bill that they put in place would allow for greater tax cuts, more and more tax cuts, or the continuing, I should say, of the tax cuts of Donald Trump from 2017. That is $4.5 trillion. And let me just clarify that because I realize I just made a mistake. The tax cuts are $4.5 trillion. The spending cuts, so think about this, the way that things work. The way that the government pays its bills is the same way we all pay our bills. We have to take in revenue. We have to take in income, earned income, income that may come from, like if we own a property and we rent it out. The way that we pay our bills is through income that's generated from, interest in the bank, interest in other things. The way we pay our bills is through the revenue that comes in. That's the same thing the government has to do. The government relies heavily upon income taxes for its revenue. What Donald Trump is proposing is to continue allowing for cuts in income taxes to the tune of $4.5 trillion, with the wealthiest people benefiting the most from that. So when I say the wealthiest people making, like nearly $5 million would see about $500,000, some of them as much as $600,000 annually in more money coming in their pockets.
Wow.
People who are making $35,000 are going to see like $1,000 coming in.
Right.
People making $64,000, middle income people, they would see maybe about $2,000. So just think about that. It's a tax cut that benefits the wealthiest. Does a person making nearly $5 million need another $500,000, $600,000 in take-home pay? That's going to do a lot more for them than a person making just $35,000 or $65,000, just getting another $1,000 or $2,000.
But people may see that, right, Sister Jennifer, and say, "Well, I'm making $65,000, like extra $2,000. I'll take that too." Wouldn't people see that as an up as opposed to a downside? So can't Americans be blindsided by this? Is what I'm trying to get at.
You spot on. And just think about that for a moment. If you told you're going to get another $1,000, right, to take home, that $1,000, when you spread that out over 52 weeks, is less than $45. With the cost of groceries, that's not going to make a difference. With the cost of housing going up and up in childcare, that is not going to help you. Start putting money away for savings, for maybe your child's college education, if that's what you desire. It's not going to help you do more to help you save for retirement. It's not going to make a material difference. But to your point, Dominique, it's going to make people feel like they're getting something. But think about what it's doing for the person bringing home, nearly $5 million. $500,000, $600,000 is going to allow you now to invest more in the stock market. It's going to allow you to put down more money on that third, that fourth, that fifth home. It's going to allow you to buy a bigger home and essentially see that home appreciate in value and make more money on that. So for the low-income person, it's not really doing much. It may make you think it's doing something, but it's not going to help you grow wealth. And that's what Donald Trump is fixating on. Now, here's the deal. So he's going to cut revenues by $4.5 trillion. But now, if you're going to cut revenues, you got to cut spending so that you're not spending more than the money you're taking in. But his spending cuts only amount to, I think they amount to right now less than $2 trillion.
Mm-hmm.
They amount to like 1.8 trillion. And where he's talking about taking money, where he's cutting, he's talking about cutting money from Medicaid, which provides health insurance for the lowest income people in America. He's talking about cutting from education, school funding, child nutrition, workforce development programs that help people with low skills to get jobs and hopefully better paying jobs. He's talking about cutting the food assistance program, the supplemental nutrition assistance program that provides funding for food pantries and for and for what we call food supports, used to be food stamps. He's talking about cutting another $500 billion. He hasn't even assigned where that's going to go yet. And then on the other side, he wants to increase border security. He wants to increase law enforcement. Who are all of these cuts going to impact? Day to day, the lives of lower income and middle income Americans, disproportionately black and brown people. We're going to struggle the most. Meanwhile, the most affluent in America are just going to keep doing better and better and better. And the House allowed this bill to be passed. I haven't even talked about how with this bill passing, if it went through the Senate and passed, how it's just going to keep growing the national deficit, which is already 33 trillion. So there's a real problem here. There's a question about whether or not it actually really can get passed with reconciliation because of how it's going to contribute year over year to the national deficit and how that might be a problem. But the House doesn't care about that. They just want to please Donald Trump and look like they're doing the right thing, many of them because they're concerned about him taking action and essentially funding the campaigns of people that would oppose them so they would not be reelected. So we got a government running right now at every level that's not really concerned about American people, but everybody wanted to keep their jobs in Congress, wanted to keep their jobs in the White House and wherever else, even if it's at the expense of low and middle income Americans.
So what are the next steps here, Sister Jennifer? And as I know people are writing on the live stream, people want to chime in. What are the next steps in this initiative, in particular with this bill? What's the next steps?
So, the bill will move to the Senate because a bill has to be voted upon and approved or voted in favor by one body of the Congress, and then it moves to the other before it can actually pass. Both sides of Congress, the House and the Senate, have to act and pass a bill. The Senate will probably take the bill, and then what they'll probably do is make some changes to it and then vote on it. If they make changes to it, it then has to go back to the House, and so this can go back and forth. They have to vote and decide on the same bill, but they have been known to change the language and make significant modifications as it moves from one house to the next, and if that happens in any one side where it's approved, then it's got to go back to the other until we get a bill that is voted on and approved that looks the same in both houses, sides of Congress. And then it goes to the president for signing. Here's what people should be doing in this moment. As it moves to the Senate, people need to, en masse, be calling and writing their senators and telling them that if they pass a bill that cuts money for critical food supports, that cuts money for Medicaid, that if they pass a bill that cuts funding for school assistance, that they are going to rise up and they will vote these people out of office next chance they get.
That's right.
That is what they need to be doing right now. Putting these senators on notice that if they pass a bill that gives them pennies in terms of their weekly take-home pay, but keeps making the most affluent Americans more and more rich, they're going to vote them out.
Now, doesn't the president still have the power, even if it doesn't pass in the Senate, to impose an executive order on this, or is that just not likely to happen?
He could. What he's been doing, you make an excellent point. He's been trying to do this left and right. The challenge that he has, and this is what we're seeing playing out in courts, is that the president has the right to put forth a budget proposal, but it is Congress that authorizes the levels of spending for each department, each agency, and that is what they call like appropriations, and that's part of the reconciliation as well. So he can't, once they pass legislation saying, these are the appropriations that are to be made to each agency and for these services, he can't now go behind or go around them and just do whatever he wants to do. It can be challenged in court. That's what we're seeing right now as an example with U.S. aid, where the government, the legislature, the Congress appropriate money for aid to other countries, international aid for crises, for supports to address famine and other issues. And when President Trump tried by executive order to shut that down, we've seen advocacy groups go into court and say, no, you can't do that. And we've seen some courts say, yep, you can't do it. We're blocking you from doing it.
And thankful to organizations like the ACLU and others who have been right on task with that, making sure that we continue to fight that good fight. I hear the music, Sister Jennifer, so we're going to take a quick break. It's Dominique Sharpton. I'm sitting in with Jennifer Jones Austin, taking your calls across the country. You can join in on the conversation today. Call us at 1-877-532-5797, and we'll be back with more of Keeping It Real with Sharpton. We'll be right back.
Breaking news. The issues, the stories affecting you. Now
Work is required. And if we can't stand up now, you got a president in the White House that has said outright, I'm not going to have diversity. Outright said he's not going to deal with the question of racism. Outright said he's suspending anything that guarantees that we're going to deal with the question of racism. In fact, he said they are oppressing white folks. What Trump said. And you are not saying nothing. And you in the pulpit, well, every prophet in the Bible, everybody in the Bible prophesied and preached according to the time in which they lived. There are no out of place prophets. There are none that God sent to discuss what happened or what's going to happen. He uses them to happen right there. Moses didn't preach about Abraham. He got the strength from the lineage of Abraham to lead the Exodus. What will they say about our story? What will they say about our generation? If when you have blatant racism, you two are afraid to stand up and call the truth out. Stop telling yourself you're not confident of what you could do. When people with half your skills and a quarter of your talent have gone on to create big waves in life, if you look at them and you know you're more gifted than them, then what is your problem? You are looking for someone to come and drag you into success. You got to use what you have, which is, in my judgment, more skillful than others I've known in your area. Use that and believe in that, and your confidence will build up as you get going and start doing. And don't chase the spotlight. Sharpen your skills. Live in your purpose. And you'll get so good the spotlight will be chasing you. Be so good they can't help but talk about you and put the spotlight on you. You don't get your energy from chasing the spotlight. You get your energy by chasing your purpose. The spotlight and other adulation will come with it. Have a great day. One of the things that that we're going to deal with is this DEI and deal with how we target a company that has joined the anti-DEI movement. Now, there are other efforts going on, and I support them. I'm not against nobody doing whatever they think is right. But I know how to do a boycott. I'm not talking about, I support what a bishop is doing in Georgia, Reggie Jackson, and my friend and brother Jamal Bryant doing the 40-day don't buy. That's great. Somebody else is doing shutdown on the 28th. That's great. They put my name out there. I know about it, but I'm not against it. But what we must do is we're going to convene at the network convention where we have now a commission that we have started in NAN on King Day, that on 90 days later, which will be in the middle of our convention, we will give the report on a company that has a high level of consumer doubt that comes out of our community and a small margin of profit. We know then that we can take a real impact because he cannot have his margin of profit turn into a loss and sustain itself. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to announce we're going to buy some stock in some of these companies and go to the stockholders meeting. So all of y'all here today, I'm going to buy some shares and we go into the stockholders meeting and stand up in the meeting and say, how do you sell in our community, but you won't give contracts to our people? You won't hire our people. You won't deal with the C-suites. So we're going to have a multi-pronged strategy. Why don't you advertise on black media? We're going across the board and that we're laying out the plan. And we got people those 4 days. People that are watching that want to come, all you have to do is register www.nationalactionnetwork.net, or you can call the toll-free number. You can call now. People are at the phones now at 1-877-626-4651.
The families, we have 3 families represented here. Where we have Eric Nicholson, who your NAB member, Rodney Nicholson is his father. We have both Lisa and Trevor, who lost their mother, and then we have Evelyn and her children and family. We don't recite her on the news, but Evelyn McClendon's and so we're one.
Let's pray. Dear God, we come brokenhearted, but still with firm belief that there is meaning to everything that you allow. Give us the strength to stand even amidst this debris and to rebuild and to stand up to the challenge. And that we come to help these families as we have been anointed by you to be helpful. Stand with the clergy and others in this community and the leaders here to know that they're not alone. And let us not go for vanity, but for sanity.
Yes.
And to redeem this community as an example to people all over the world, that you may be burned down, but you're not burnt out, and that you will make a way out of nowhere. These blessings we ask on each and every one of these people, even when the cameras are going, that you still shine a light of mercy. These blessings we ask in your name. Amen.
I'm Dominique Sharpton, sitting in for the Rev with Sister Jennifer Jones Austin. We're taking your calls across the country. You can join in on the conversation by calling us at 1-877-532-5797, 1-877-532-5797. Sister Jennifer, let's go back to the phones. We've got some folks holding on that want to chime in on the conversation. Let's speak with Jerry. Jerry's listening to us from Milwaukee on WNOV. You're keeping it real. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon to you and Sister Austin. How are you, Dominique?
Good. How are you?
I'm blessed. I was calling. Now, Donald Trump is talking about getting these people a green card. If they pay him $5 million.
It's something called a gold card. Some type of gold card.
Yeah, but they say it's green, gold or green. But my point is, now he talking about sending folks back to Mexico. Where he gonna put them at? And see, him and Putin, they got all this messed up because that money they get, if anybody crazy enough to give it to them, they ain't doing nothing but putting it in their pocket. And Putin needs to go back to his own country. What about them people he got up in space? They ain't made it back down yet. Come on. And then Donald Trump had his school records. He didn't want nobody to know how bad of a student he was. That's all it is. There's something wrong with that picture. Yeah, something is wrong with that picture, and he needs some help. And if he do anything, he needs to stop. Putin got something on him. You know, it ain't fair. You know, it's not fair. And I insist for us to be here. And he got his butt over there in the White House. Our ancestors built that. You know, and everything like that. I can't understand. But I'm not in shape to be out there marching with y'all. But if y'all need me to make calls, whatever, just write my name and number down. I'll be home making calls for you all. And you all have a nice day.
Thank you. Same to you. Thank you so much. Let's go, Sister Jennifer. Let's talk to Elder. Elder's listening to us from Philadelphia on WURD.
Can I say a quick point
yes,
on that?
Yes, for sure.
Just want to add a quick point on that. The sadness of this is that this is actually, here's what Donald Trump does. He makes us all think that he's doing things that have never been done before, and he put in 2017 in place some of this type, this type of efforts. You know, America has for a while been selling investment activities or offers to foreigners. He's just now selling citizenship. So before, they've been offering people, you know, if you invested $1 million, you'd get a piece of land and develop it in America. Now he's just saying, let's up it to $5 million and give you citizenship with it. And so in some ways what he's doing is revealing how parts of America have been for sale for some time now, but now he's tying citizenship to it. And essentially he has no place, as she just said, for, you know, Mexicans crossing the border, Haitians crossing the border, and others. But we'll take in the rich foreigners because he just wants to keep pumping money. And who are the rich foreigners in the main? People who are white.
Elder, you're up. Keeping it real. Good afternoon.
Hello.
Elder. Hey, how you doing?
All right. How are you both? And my hat goes out to both you and your father, and to Vice Chairman. The only reason why I'm calling is because my great grandfather was slavery was abolished when he was 7 years old. And some kind of way he went to school. I don't know whether his master sent him and his brother, but anyway, to make a long story short, that riot that happened in Wilmington, North Carolina in 1898, my grandmother was his daughter, and my grandmother lived to be 100. She was born 1891. and she died in 1991. And Mama told me years ago when I was rocking on the porch with her, she said she was in the pandemic of 1918, and she said, it's coming again. She said, and you're going to live to see it. And I'm 82 years old.
Wow.
And the point I want to get to, where are the Democrats? You understand what I mean? If this man is allowed to change laws and do all the dirt that he's doing, why aren't the Democrats coming out and saying something? They should be able to change the laws just the way he's changing the laws. I marched in Washington. I marched during the time of Martin Luther King. Actually saw him in person. And the thing about it is now, they're trying to attack the elderly. They're trying to make, and that's like Sister Austin said, it's not only affecting you mentally, but physically. And they're having a fun doing it, but they would not be able to do it if these Democrats would stand up. Of course, it was Democrats that attacked it, Wilmington, North Carolina, in 1898. And if you go to YouTube, you can pull it up. Thank you, and keep on keeping on.
Thank you so much. Sister Jennifer, I don't know about you, but I know we've been talking about economic empowerment. And in this moment, as we see clearly what the, what the goals and, what's in line for what the president is thinking, in terms of, make the rich richer and make the poor poorer. I also feel like, as this brother Elder said, in terms of what the Democrats are doing, and you even laid it out in terms of what we can be doing to support and, to support and dismantle these efforts that are trying to be passed that's going to impose and infringe us. However, I do feel, and you mentioned this on this platform before, about us being more proactive in terms of reactive to a lot of the issues that are happening. And how we stay on top of being proactive in our action. This is why things like the boycott is important, because we've got to start really strategizing financially, where we know the power is, where he's trying to empower us by crippling us in many ways, in terms of our pockets and in terms of how those pockets will then be lined elsewhere. And so I feel like, the action must be in financial empowerment, and the action must be in terms of, as you said, and I don't know if it's a fear factor. We talked about fear earlier. If people are just afraid because of how these punches are coming out from all different ways, it seems like we're just getting hit left and right. And so people are, they feel like their backs against the walls. We gotta see where the punches are coming before we can react and defend ourselves accordingly. But I also feel like, we in this moment have to really organize and galvanize around that financial empowerment factor, because that is what's going to really hit home the most in terms of how we start to turn things around for what we're seeing happening in the government. I don't know what you think, but those are my thoughts.
I think you're spot on, and I'll just add, just reflecting upon the work that you all do, everything from, engaging our youth huddle, to Saturday morning action rallies, to the convention that we hold every year. This year it's April 2nd, April 5th. What is key and core in all of those activities is education. And the importance of education. My father used to say all the time to us as children, gain knowledge, gain power. Four very simple words: gain knowledge, gain power. And what he was helping us to appreciate is that when you have knowledge, then you have power and you have agency. And that essentially, if you go back to the days of slavery, and then you bring it all the way forward to persisting education equity, what the political and economic powers understand in America is that when we have knowledge, we feel empowered. We're enlightened, we're engaged, and we're empowered to do something about the circumstances in which we find ourselves. And so in this moment, it is very important that people read, that they share what they read from reliable sources. I mean, how many people are walking around right now understanding the impact of this budget bill that could go through, and how it's going to do nothing more than further the economic woes of those with the least income and middle income, and it's only going to strengthen and make even better the lives of the most affluent. That information is education, and with it comes knowledge, and then with it becomes this desire to do something, to be a part. The other thing I'll say real quickly is people really need to be engaged right now. Couple education, organizing with unity, coalition building, because what's happening in America right now, it's not just a black issue.
Right.
It's not just a brown issue. There are more white people than there are black people who are about to get hit hard with all of these things that he's doing. And so this is the point, like Dr. King did when he built the Poor People's Campaign, like Fred Hampton did when he started organizing black people and white people, when Malcolm X came back after having been, on his Mecca journey and saying, I understand what this is about now. Racism is the tool, but it's not what it's all about in the end. It's a means to an end. The end itself is keeping people, lower and middle income people, forever economically deprived and struggling, and keeping the rich as they can possibly be. We got to organize, unite.
Yes.
And we can only do that through education.
Yes. When we come back, I want to talk to you about this Supreme Court's court case on reverse discrimination in the workplace that was filed by a white woman who's considered straight. Got to talk about that and more. You can join the conversation, 1-877-532-5797. We'll be back with more of Keeping It Real with Sharpton and Jennifer Jones-Austin. We'll be right back.
Traveling around the country, talking to the radio announcers, the church people, and the street people, telling them that God has smiled on me. God has smiled on you if you got breath in your body, if He woke you up this morning and started you on your way. And I want to tell you some stories of people that God smiled on. We know the story of Dr. Martin Luther King, how he started way back in Montgomery, Alabama in 1955, trying just to get dignity, trying to get respect. And he went all the way to the mountaintop. But he didn't forget about the brothers in the valley. He didn't forget about those trapped in the alley. And I hear Brother Martin King say, God has smiled on me. He's been good to me. Let me tell you, God has smiled on me. It's been so good to me. Then I see as Dr. King went on, another man stepped into the forefront by the name of John F. Kennedy, who rose up and said, let's not stand back. Let's not wait for a handout. Let's wait for a way out. He said, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. He said, don't us gravel and don't us moan, because God done smile on us. Let me say it. God has smiled on me. He has set me free. Let me say it. Yeah. One more time. I want to say it real slow. I'll say God has smiled on me. He has set me free. Traveling around the country, talking to the radio announcers, the church people and the street people, telling them that God has smiled on me. God has smiled on you if you got breath in your body. If He woke you up this morning and started you on your way. And I want to tell you some stories of people that God smiled on. We know the story of Dr. Martin Luther King, how he started way back in Montgomery, Alabama in 1955, trying just to get dignity, trying to get respect. And he went all the way to the mountaintop. But he didn't forget about the brothers in the valley. He didn't forget about those trapped in the alley. And I hear Brother Martin King say, God has smiled on me. He's been good to me. Let me tell you, God has smiled on me. It's been so good to me. Then I see as Dr. King went on, another man stepped into the forefront by the name of John F. Kennedy, who rose up and said, let's not stand back. Let's not wait for a handout. Let's wait for a way out. He said, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. He said, don't us gravel and don't us moan, because God done smile on us. Let me say it. God has smiled on me. He has set me free. Let me say it. Yeah. One more time. I want to say it real slow. I'll say God has smiled on me. He has set me free. Pick it up. God has smiled on me. I feel it. Then I went on by backstage at the Apollo Theater and I saw a man come out. They call him the King of Soul, James Brown. And James Brown said, Reverend, don't you worry. I started out as a shoe shine boy. I started out as a convict. I started out uneducated. But I learned to sing my song. And I sung it all over the world. I told him it was a man's world. I told him about the big payback. I told him Papa got a brand new bag. And all over the world, they can hear my voice. But Reverend, don't you frown. Don't you bow your head. Tell him what you told me, Brother Brown. God has smiled on me. He has set me free. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I want to scream, y'all. I want to scream, y'all. God has smiled on me.
Jennifer Jones Austin. We're taking your calls across the country. You can join in on the conversation. Call us at 1-877-532-5797, 1-877-532-5797. Before the break, Sister Jennifer, we were getting into this conversation. I do want to talk a bit about the Supreme Court case on reverse discrimination in the workplace that was filed by this woman who is white and straight. Can we talk a little bit about this, please?
Interesting case, and I think one of the things we need to lean in on before I tell you a little bit about it is that it looks like a case that has won the sympathy and the support of a majority of the Supreme Court justices, that it is not simply a case that looks like just the more conservative side, the Donald Trump appointees in particular would be most in favor of, and those that were there that just, like that were added to those who were conservative. We've got some more progressive justices who seem to be leaning in and supportive of this plaintiff's claims. So here's what happened. A white woman who identifies as straight brought a lawsuit against the government of Ohio, saying that she had been discriminated against, that she had a boss who is a gay man who looked over her for a promotion because she was not gay, and that he actually favored a gay person. And so she brought suit, and the federal court where the case was first heard essentially said that she didn't have she could not prove her case, that she had to demonstrate background circumstances suggesting pattern and practice. She fought that, and it's going all the way up to the Supreme Court. And what the issue here is that it looks like the lower courts are saying that she's got to have a greater burden of proof that she was discriminated against because she is a white majority straight person. And that what has been allowed in past cases is that you don't, as a person of color or maybe a gay person, someone who falls into a protected class, race, religion, gender identity, sexual orientation, in other cases, you've never necessarily had to demonstrate that this is happening to other people like you. But what happened in the lower courts was they said, no, you got to show there's a pattern in practice here, that they've discriminated against other, white majority persons, that, the person who was of color, or in this case, the person who was gay, has done this to other white people. And she fought back and said, well, you're not asking the same of people who are gay, who are black, who are brown. And the Supreme Court is saying, hey, you know what? She's making a good point. Why do we have a different standard for people of color, people who are gay, people who may be disabled, people who, may come from a different, ethnicity, religion, and the like? It's interesting.
Very interesting.
Right. It's like what happens. It's like, like my daddy used to say, good leaders control for the consequences they intend. Great leaders control for the consequences they intend, and the ones they don't.
So they're basically saying this woman is not qualified to cry discrimination in the workplace.
Well, the lower courts were saying that, but what the Supreme Court is saying is she may very well have a case of discrimination. But and we shouldn't be saying she's got to prove it by showing that the government, the Ohio government, has done this to other white people. Why does she have to show that it's been done to other white people? Why are we not just looking at what happened to her?
Let's go back to the phones. Let's speak with Todd. Todd's listening to us from Ohio on WERE. Todd, you're keeping it real. Good afternoon.
Hey, Dominique Sharpton.
Hey.
Jennifer Jones Austin. So,
how you doing?
I'm in a perpetual state of struggle, Jennifer, but that's not what I called about. So I want to know if you're familiar with this bill 479 being introduced by, I think his first name is Josh. He's a Republican out of the 2nd Congressional District in Oklahoma. His last name is spelled Bremer, Cheen, and he wants to prohibit people that are on public assistance cards. They don't call them food stamp cards anymore. What do they call them? SNAP. That are receiving SNAP benefits to be prohibited from buying cookies, pies, cakes, and pop, essentially junk food. Are you familiar with this bill that he's trying to push through? I know you're aware that Bloomberg tried this in New York City at one time.
So I am familiar with the bill, and I think what is interesting here is very similar to what happened here in New York City. It's this tug on whether or not you are imposing upon individuals' rights by imposing upon them what their diet should be comprised of. And what often isn't centered on is, frankly, like what, like the connection to health and well-being. And so, like this is a bill that's saying you can't have high sugary foods. And high sugary foods have a significant correlation with in America with diabetes, with obesity, and what Bloomberg was seeking to do in New York was to say, you know what, we got to figure out how to limit people's consumption of these foods, because, and he wasn't doing it through like SNAP benefits, but he was doing it through like caloric intake and things that would be promoted in schools and the like. But the deal that is never really talked about, Todd, is he was tying it to the government's cost. Like here's a Donald Trump. He was looking at the cost that the government bears every year with respect to diet-related diseases. So if you're improving people's health and well-being, then you're cutting down on the costs that are expended. In New York City, it was like nearly $80 billion back at that time, nearly $80 billion in public health care funding for higher concentrations of obesity and diabetes. And very often it was in communities where the greatest access, where they had very little access to healthy foods, but they had significant access to high caloric and high sugar foods. So I'm familiar. What are your thoughts about it?
I've had the benefit of being able to look at the probably about 12 or 13 grocery stores, somewhere in upper income neighborhoods in D.C., Chicago, Atlanta, and Shaker Heights, Ohio, and seeing how much money they bring in from EBT cards, okay? Now, I haven't seen it every single week from every single one of those locations, but I've seen them in midweeks during the middle of the month, not the end of the month or the beginning of the month, how much money they bring into those grocery stores with people that buy chips, pop, cakes, and things like that. I'm aware of just how high the cost is of eating healthy as well. And my question to this person, and I actually watched this man speak on C-SPAN once before in reference to this, is okay, if you cut their ability to buy those cheap foods, which is what they essentially are, cheap foods, are you prepared to add the availability of funds on their cards so that they can eat healthy at the cost of what healthy foods cost? Because that would be, in theory, it sounds like a good idea, but it's only in theory that it sounds like a good idea. It costs a lot of money to eat healthy, and then they have to go back after they purchase the healthy food and cook, which runs up utilities for poor people. These cheaper foods don't run up their utilities, and they don't have the benefit of buying some of the hot, healthy foods they sell in grocery stores because those cars don't allow them to buy hot foods.
Todd, I'm going to ask you to hold on because I hear the music and I don't want to cut you off because I know this conversation needs to be had. So we're going to take a break. Todd is going to hold on. Jennifer Jones-Austin still with us, and we're taking your calls. You still have time to join in on the conversation, 1-877-532-5797. We'll be right back. More of Keeping It Real with Sharpton. We'll be right back.
Do you owe $10,000 or more in credit card debt or personal loans?
Stop telling yourself you're not confident of what you could do. When people with half your skills and a quarter of your talent have gone on to create big waves in life, if you look at them and you know you're more gifted than them, then what is your problem? You are looking for someone to come and drag you into success. You've got to use what you have, which is, in my judgment, more skillful than others I've known in your area. Use that and believe in that, and your confidence will build up as you get going and start doing. And don't chase the spotlight. Sharpen your skills. Live in your purpose. And you'll get so good the spotlight will be chasing you. Be so good they can't help but talk about you and put the spotlight on you. You don't get your energy from chasing the spotlight. You get your energy by chasing your purpose. The spotlight and other adulation will come with it. Have a great day.
Work is required. And if we can't stand up now, you got a president in the White House that has said outright, I'm not going to have diversity. Outright said he's not going to deal with the question of racism. Outright said he's suspending anything that guarantees that we're going to deal with the question of racism. In fact, he said they are oppressing white folks. What Trump said. And you are not saying nothing. And you in the pulpit, well, every prophet in the Bible, everybody in the Bible prophesied and preached according to the time in which they lived. There are no out of place prophets. There are none that God sent to discuss what happened or what's going to happen. He uses them to happen right there. Moses didn't preach about Abraham. He got the strength from the lineage of Abraham to lead the Exodus. What will they say about our story? What will they say about our generation? If when you have blatant racism, you two are afraid to stand up and call the truth out.
Families. We have 3 families represented here. Where we have Eric Nicholson, who your NAB member, Rodney Nicholson is his father. We have both Lisa and Trevor, who lost their mother, and then we have Evelyn and her children and family. We belong with the news that Evelyn McClendon's. And so we're one.
Let's pray. Dear God, we come brokenhearted, but still with firm belief that there is meaning to everything that you allow. Give us the strength to stand even amidst this debris and to rebuild and to stand up to the challenge. And that we come to help these families as we have been anointed by you to be helpful. Stand with the clergy and others in this community and the leaders here to know that they're not alone. And let us not go for vanity, but for sanity.
Yes.
And to redeem this community as an example to people all over the world, that you may be burned down, but you're not burnt out, and that you will make a way out of nowhere. These blessings we ask on each and every one of these people, even when the cameras are going, that you still shine a light of mercy. These blessings we ask in your name. Amen. I had a thought this morning that I want to share with you about mentorship. I am able to do a lot of what I do because I had great mentors, but there are correct ways and incorrect ways to mentor people, in my opinion. I was mentored as a boy preacher by Bishop F.D. Washington, one of the great Pentecostal preachers of his time. Then Reverend William Jones, who became my pastor after Bishop Washington died, who was unquestionably in the top 5 black church ministers, theologians. Reverend Jesse Jackson, who I started my activism under his leadership, he and Reverend Jones. And I learned politics directly as a youth director from Shirley Chisholm. So even though I didn't finish college, I had the most unique education in the world from being exposed to giants. But the one thing I learned is as I grew older and people started coming younger than me and wanted me to teach and mentor them, the magic of the mentors I had is they did not want me to be their clone. They wanted me to learn things from them and use my own gifts and talent in my own unique way and let me do things on my own, because they knew that if I flopped in some things, it would teach me for the other things. They'll come and help me once I was down, but they were not going to have me avoid being down. And they were not going to impose themselves on me. Why am I saying that? Because too many mentors want clones, and too many mentees want their mentors to put them on a pedestal. Oh, so-and-so didn't do this for me. Oh, so-and-so didn't open doors for me. If they got to open doors for you, it may mean that they knew you weren't ready to go through those doors. Their job is to prepare you. Your job is to develop your own skills, your own unique ways. And I don't care if it's my daughters, who both have come into their own, or anyone else. I'm not a talent agent. I did not form National Action Network to give people their step up. I formed it to fight for justice for everybody.
Keeping it real. Keeping it real. I'm Dominique Sharpton, sitting in with Jennifer Jones Austin, talking to y'all across the country. Before the break, we were talking with Todd. Todd, are you still there?
I'm still here.
All right.
So here's the push. Here's where the pushback is coming from. That's why I brought those things up before we went on break. The grocery store is taking a lot of money from EBT cards, and a lot of that money is spent on junk food. And the grocery stores work on small margins of profit. Then the other pushback is coming from Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Nabisco, Frito-Lay. They make a whole lot of money off of their products, off of people that buy their products with EBT cards. So they're going to have a big problem with it, okay? And then there's this other thing, which I mentioned first, which is going to be some pushback up front. So maybe I shouldn't even say pushback up front. In order for people to eat healthy, they need more money. A lot of folks eat the junk food not as a primary part of their diet, but it's in their diet because they can afford it. It's cheap, and it could keep them moving for a little while. They might buy a bag of apples and 3 cans of tuna, three packs of tuna, but they might also buy 4 or 5 bags of chips and some cake because they know it's going to sit on them, and the Coca-Cola is going to sit on them too. So that's why I say, in theory, it sounds like a good idea, but it doesn't look like he thought it through all the way. And aren't those dilemmas that need to be taken into consideration? And most particularly, they need more money on their cards if you're not going to allow them to buy anything but healthy food, and they're going to need to be able to buy hot food as well, which they don't have that option now.
Yeah, but Sister Jennifer, even going to your point earlier, talking about, how the budget and the budget spending, and how regulations will be, mandated state to state in dealing with certain government, funding like SNAP and other programs. Couldn't we see, before we see a surge in giving, quote unquote, more money to SNAP, wouldn't we see a decline before we see an uptick in this, as the way that things are playing out right now?
Absolutely, absolutely. So I think, and I would agree that you're both making the most critical points here. That when very often when legislation is proposed, when bills are proposed, they don't, as I was saying, like I used that line, good leaders control for the consequences they intend, great leaders control for the ones they intend and the ones they don't. Something my dad said to me all the time. You don't see, like very often with bills, that they are thought through with respect to design, implementation, and ultimate impact. So yes, on its face, it looks good to say that, and you see value, as I was explaining, when you think about diet-related diseases tied to obesity and diabetes. If you want people to live more healthy lives and you want to be an influencer in that, some may say that that's government overreach, but some would say, well, if the government on the back end is having to bear the costs associated with these diet-related diseases, then they should be able to restrict the dollars that government pays for food to healthier foods. But as Todd is saying, well, then you better increase the dollar amounts for them. But when you have, as we're seeing right now, Donald Trump aiming to cut significant money from the agriculture funding, $203 billion that $230 billion that oversees SNAP and farm subsidies. Where's the money coming from to do that? So it's always a situation. It may appear to be well intentioned, but what are you going to do? You're going to cut this money, and then people are going to be all the more hungry. And what happens, sadly, is that the reason we see in many instances, and I'm going to tell you, it's black and brown communities disproportionately that are affected by what Todd is talking about. The reason we see people loading up on high caloric and sugary foods is because, as he said, they're cheaper and they fill your bellies, or it's an empty filling of your bellies, of our bellies. That's what's happening here. So the government, it's like, so what, we now going to go like hungry because we can't buy a lot?
In New York City, Jennifer, New York City, what's the estimated cost for a healthy family, for a family or for a mother, dad, and 2 children school age to eat on a healthy diet per month? What's the estimated cost? Just an uncommitted guess.
So if I'm remembering correctly, that number is somewhere around, on an annual basis, a minimum, I believe it's right now, a minimum of about $24,000 and I'm going borough by borough. I don't have the citywide, but the Bronx, which is considered to be, if you will, the most affordable, or said differently, the borough where we have people with the lowest incomes living. It's somewhere around $22,000 to $24,000. Now you got to keep in mind that the income levels of people living in the Bronx
are high.
For a family of 4. No, the levels.
No, I'm talking about the cost. My mistake. Go ahead.
Right, the cost is high. The cost is somewhere around $150,000 for a family of 2 adults and 2 children, but the actual earned income is less than, on average, it's less than $50,000. So just think about that. If your basic food costs are $22,000 to $24,000, and you're only bringing home $50,000 before taxes, you got a real difficult time. That's why you can't make ends meet. That's why you need to get food supports and subsidies.
I'm going to get off the phone now, but I'm going to tell you, I'm following the progress of that bill to see how far it goes, because that does not appear to be a well thought out one.
Absolutely.
I'll talk to y'all later.
I agree with that.
Todd, one thing. Check out the National True Cost of Living.org, and there you'll find data that goes state by state, and it looks at national numbers on what it costs to be secure. And then you can even drill down to some counties. National True Cost of Living.org.
Thank you so much, Todd. Thank you for your call. Before we head out, Sister Jennifer, I know that we've got a couple more folks holding on. We're going to have to get with y'all tomorrow. Want to thank y'all for calling in, and thank you, Sister Jennifer, as always, for your due diligence, for calling in and for being a voice that we need in this time. We really appreciate that and everything you lay out to keep us in line and in the action. Really appreciate that as well. Make sure that y'all remember a couple of things. We talked about the convention that's coming up. Sister Jennifer also talked about it. It's April 2nd through the 5th. We want to make sure everyone is aware that we've got this convention coming up, National Convention, National Action Network's convention, April 2nd through the 5th. It'll be at the Sheraton Hotel in New York, Times Square. We want everyone to register who can attend. It is a free $99. convention, FREE. It's free to attend. We just need to make sure that you are on the roll to attend and to be in the building with us April 2nd through the 5th. We've got some heavy hitters that is coming through the building, Sister Jennifer, from Sister Patty LaBelle, our music icon, to Stacey Abrams, to so many of our attorney generals who are, of course, in line of what we're talking about, dealing with state legislation on the state level, that's coming to speak with us. We've got Sister Jennifer Jones Austin coming through, and the board of National Action Network. We've got a lot going on and a lot to be involved in. But what we're really doing, Sister Jennifer, is laying out that action agenda of what we're going to do as it relates to healthcare, as it relates to education, as it relates to gun violence, as it relates to climate control. We're talking about everything, and we're not only talking about it, we're putting action items on the plate, on the agenda as to what we are going to be committing ourselves to doing throughout this year, leading into, of course, midterm elections next year and so many other things that are coming up. We've got to be prepared, we've got to be active, and we've got to be involved. So make sure y'all tune in and make sure that y'all register to join us at the convention, www.nationalactionnetwork.net. And as always, Politics Nation with Al Sharpton is on every Saturday and Sunday afternoon on MSNBC, 5 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. And this Saturday's National Action Network's rally and broadcast with Reverend Al Sharpton begins live at 9 a.m. on Impact Television and 107.5 WBLS FM. Thanks to all those who called in and got through. Thanks to those that called through and held on anyhow. We'll speak with y'all tomorrow. And as Reverend Sharpton says, whatever you do, wherever you go, and however you feel, make sure you tell someone that Reverend Al and now Dominique told you personally. You got to keep it real. Keep it real. Keep it real. We'll talk with y'all tomorrow.